This is Blind Metal Gamer along with Kyra Super Saiyan, and you're listening to the Blindside Podcast. What is up, everybody? It is Blind Metal Gamer along with Kyra Super Saiyan. What is up, Kyra?
Hi, Blind. It is good to be back. It is a lovely spring day, and we are bringing you a bonus episode today.
Yes. In today's episode of the Blindside Podcast, we have fellow Sable, Kentucky ambassador Carolyn Wheeler in the studio with us today. Good afternoon, Carolyn.
Well, hi. Good afternoon, Tim and Kelsey. How are you all on this beautiful afternoon here in Kentucky?
Doing great.
I am well. Please ignore the background noise. My pets have decided to wrestle.
All right, so today we're talking about employment first and things of that nature. Carolyn, if you'd like, I'll let you begin the presentation today, and you can explain employment first, and then what will happen that Kyra and I will be doing after the brief explanation of employment first. Carolyn, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim and Kelsey. Well, I'm glad to be here this afternoon. So Employment First is an initiative that's been going on probably since the beginning of time, but officially it's an initiative that probably the leadership was provided through an organization called APSE, which is Association of Persons Supporting Employment First. And really the catalyst for this is by and large people themselves with disabilities who want to work, as well as people who provide employment services. And so Employment First is a policy statement in some states, and other states it's legislation. We have both here in Kentucky. But it means that employment in the general workforce should be the first and preferred option for individuals with disabilities who receive any kind of publicly funded services, so that people who want to work would have the supports and services that they need to be able to work. And simply put, employment first means real jobs and real wages. And so I think today, Tim, you and Kelsey are going to share your story about how you are currently employed and your journey toward competitive integrated employment. So I think, Tim, you're going to start.
All right. You guys know me as Blind Metal Gamer. So to begin my employment journey, I attended the Kentucky School for the Blind in Louisville, Kentucky from the age of 5 to the age of 18, leaving the school after my junior year of high school to pursue my senior year in public school. So I went to public school here in my hometown, and I graduated in May of 2002. And after graduation, I got a job with LVR's assistants. And little did I know at the time, this job was going to have a big impact. So I get this job at a place called FHI, and I would work 5 days a week, full 8-hour days, 40 hours a week, doing various, what they call piecework, where you would do so much work and, they would pay you by the piece, not by an hourly rate. But at the time, I didn't know that going in. I just knew, okay, I'm getting up, going to work. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to make a fortune. I'm going to make me some money. I'm going to get to be independent financially, support my family and myself. And then payday comes. So we all go to the window to get our paychecks. I get mine, and I'm hit with a slap to the face when my paycheck for a full 40-hour work week at this place was $34. I'm like, what? Really? And I looked at it, and I had my family look at it, and one of my family members, my late brother, wanted to go up and let's just say deal with it his way. But he, so I can't, I'm like, this cannot be right. So I was like, really? Is this correct? And they said, yes. But I couldn't just quit my job because that was the only job I had. That was my only means of income. So I keep getting these little minuscule paychecks. And I'm like, this is not right. And after a lot of infighting with my mother about, why can't I go off to college, off to UK and do the because I wanted to go into broadcasting. I wanted to go into radio and do something like that. But they were like, no, you got to try this because, you're not things just didn't work out for the going off to college thing, according to OVR at the time. So I agreed to this, so I had to do with what I agreed. So I keep working there till September 2003. I told my OVR counselor at the time, I said, look, I'm getting paid sub-minimum wage. I really want to give the college thing a shot. Can I please try? And she said, look, they're not doing you right. Get out of that situation. We'll get you in at the McDowell Center. So from December of 2003 to March of 2005, I went to the McDowell Center up in Louisville to get prepared for college, with prep for the what they call the Compass test. So I go in, I take the Compass test in 2005, and I move into my college dorm at UK on August 19th, 2005. And OVR was like, yeah, we're going to get you all this stuff. You're going to have all this, computer and equipment and all this. I only had two things. I only had a large closed circuit television. So to compare it for those who are kind of wondering and listening, it was big enough to cover the desk that's currently in front of me right now. And then I had a talking scientific calculator. So I move in with just these two things thinking, okay, surely things are going to get better. So the first day of classes rolls around. I go to class, and the math professor, I had to take a remedial math class. She was like, no calculators. I said, but, professor, I have this calculator that they got me just for this class. She said, I'm sorry, no calculators at all. You need to go get a letter of accommodation. So I go down to the disability office. I go and to talk to the disability lady about this. And the front desk receptionist looks at me with just a straight face and says, you got anything better to do? And I'm thinking, what? I did all this, to come here to get done dirty. And I was very, very angry about it, because they had promised me the world and didn't deliver on it. And then that night my mom called me. She said, how are things going? I said, well, they didn't give me what I needed. I'm not in a good place. She said, well, son, do you want to come home and just get a job? I said, yeah, come and get me. So her and her boyfriend at the time got their butt up to my dorm at UK, got me packed up in the car. I had my friends that I had made over that little 3-day period I was there help me move my stuff out. And on the road, I went back home. And my brother asked me what happened. I told him, and he was furious. He said, well, you did the right thing. I said, what do you mean? He said, you did the right thing. Because, now you can focus on what you need to focus on. So then some time goes by, and I meet an OVR counselor named Craig Callahan. So I met Craig. It was still 2005. He and I were talking, and he said, look, have you thought about volunteering? I said, no. He said, you don't get paid for it, but this will be good for your resume. It'll get you out into the world, into the workforce. It'll get your name out there. I said, sure thing. So from 2000 and from October 2006 to December 2006, I volunteered at a senior citizen center here in mine and Kairo's hometown. And then I met in 2008 Milton Tyree through a friend of mine. And we all were talking about, getting me into customized employment. I had no clue. And I got the job that I have currently with CCDD. I started in the fall of 2009. And my job first was your typical front desk manager, answering phones, transfer calls, helping direct visitors, shredding typical tasks like that. Then 2020 comes around and COVID hits. So what do? They had me working from home. So what I started doing is what I do now, which is I take notes for various Legislative Research Commission or LRC meetings. I take notes for full council meetings, various technical advisory committees or TACs, and the Medicaid Advisory Committee or the MAC, and for stable ambassador meetings. And what I do is I take these notes, and then I, use Copilot to edit them down. And then I take that version, I put that into ChatGPT, convert that to plain language, and submit both the detailed and the plain language versions of each set of notes I take. And then I also review websites for the University of Kentucky when needed for accessibility. And I also, like I said, am a stable ambassador, so I not only attend the meetings, but I, I give presentations as well when needed. So I help Carolyn out there too. So to conclude my story, I would say my advice to the younger generation that's coming up today, or someone who's just recently getting their feet wet in the workforce who has a disability, don't be afraid to use the resources that are given to you. And there's going to be some great resources in the description that you'll be able to refer to if needed. So they'll be there. And for those of you who might be just exiting high school, my advice would be, if your VI teacher and OVR counselor think that you can only do just one-dimensional type work, like the experience I had, don't believe them. Rise above that and show them what you can do and show your potential and do your thing. All right, so that's been my story. Carolyn, the floor is yours.
We can't hear you, Carolyn.
No, yeah, but that's because I had my mic muted, Kelsey. So thank you. So, well, Tim, your story certainly demonstrates that you persevered and that you were willing to not let something that didn't work out, determine the rest of your career trajectory. So I think that's a really good lesson for young people who might be listening to this podcast. That something worked out initially. Do you agree, Tim? Do you see?
Yes.
What do you?
Oh, absolutely. And the reason why I put that part at the end was because the vision itinerary teacher that I had at the time, when I went to public school, thought that I only was capable of doing one thing, and that was answering a phone.
Mm.
And so, how did you overcome that, Tim?
Well, I mean, I had to, as my story demonstrated, I had to really prove that there was more I could do. And when I got the opportunity to do the note taking, I jumped all over it. And when I got the opportunity to work doing the accessibility stuff, again, I jumped all over it because I saw these as opportunities to prove myself. And just like with this podcast, it gives me a chance to prove I can do more. Because you never know what life could throw my way,
That's right. We sure don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, that's for sure. So it's good to have, I guess, a growth mindset, Tim, not a fixed mindset. You can learn to do things, that you can create opportunities for yourself, and that advocacy for yourself is really critical, isn't it?
Yes.
I think it's important to note with you in particular, Tim, is that you had a big life change in 2024, and it could have very well have gotten in the way of your ability to do your current job, but they were willing to work with you and adapt to you, and it did not get in your way of your job. You overcame it.
That was actually 2023.
Oh shoot, yes it was. I'm sorry.
6 months and
I
a day after my
misremembered.
fiance died.
He lost what little was left of his vision and had to relearn everything, but thankfully it worked out for him in the end.
Well, and Tim, I think it would be helpful for listeners to understand, maybe you've explained this in other podcasts, but how assistive technology assists you in doing your job and your life, doing this.
Sure. Well, assistive technology, I was using a program called Zoom Text. It was a screen magnifier. It did have speech. So it would not only magnify my computer screen, but it would read things to me. So like I would be taking notes, it would read what I would type. It would read emails and things like that. Now, when I lost my vision near the end of 2023, I had to pivot. I had to make a very big change from Zoom Text to screen reader. Thankfully, it was an easy switch. And the screen reader that I use is called Non-Visual Desktop Access. It is free. I have put the link to that in another video I did. And then I also use JAWS, which you can buy from the Freedom Scientific website.
So your knowledge about all of that, how did you learn about all of that, Tim?
Well, I learned through NVDA through a friend of mine. And I just, was going through the whole vision thing. I'm like, what am I going to do? My friend said, look, have you ever heard of NVDA? I said, no. I said, what is it? She said, it's a free screen reader. You need to get that for your computer. So I had my mother help me get it on my computer, and boom, within 2 days, I was back up and running.
Wow.
Thank God for Alexa. I was asking Alexa, what do I do for this? How do I do this and that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So to learn, and that's what I did with Jaws too, so I could learn what I needed to learn to get me up and running, and it's just been a game changer.
Well, and
And
you also use your iPhone, Tim.
yes, I do use my iPhone for like listening to meetings and things like that. That way I can take notes. So both of those things, they're a good tag team, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
that
I'm not sure if Kelsey's of it. There's Kelsey. So Kelsey, how about let's hear your story.
Okay, well, mine's a little bit more complicated. Um, I was diagnosed with autism in 2003 when I was in the middle of elementary school. I graduated from 2000. I graduated from the same high school Tim did in 2012. Um, After doing special ed classes, particularly collab classes, which is where a special ed instructor would be in some of my classes with other special ed students. And I tried community college. It did not work. I went to trade school for adults with disabilities. It is called Carl Perkins. Did not fit in there. Gave it multiple tries before I was asked to leave for the last time and focused on my mental health. Tried getting a job, and I had done volunteer work, so I had some job experience. And the first few times I tried to get a job did not go well. My disability got in the way a couple of times. And so I went back to community college, graduated from there, went to university with the intent of getting a bachelor's, which I did in 3 years, which was good because my financial aid was running out. Tried finding a job um, after getting my bachelor's, got an office job through a temp agency, held it down for a year, but then the autism and the contract agency my temp job was working with kind of got in the way of that. And so unemployed, found another job, had that job down for a few years. And not a few years, for a few months, unemployed again, this time because I just made a mistake, and that's what happens sometimes. And so then I spent another several months unemployed. And in the meantime, I started volunteering again because I needed a reason to get out of the house. And volunteering looks good on a resume. And in the meantime, I contacted OVR and I'm like, I really need help finding a job and I want to try something different this time. They paired me with a job coach agency called OWL. OWL walked me around and interviewed me, did all these assessments to see what would be a good fit. And we were going to start looking for something immediately. And I was under a lot of stress. I broke down. I said, I'm tired of not working. I'm tired of not having money. I need something now. They recommended my current job, which is a warehouse job. And due to the nature of my job, I'm not going to specify what type of warehouse. But basically, what I do is 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week, I walk around a warehouse surrounded by inventory, sign the invoice, and then pick the inventory and put it in what is literally a plastic milk crate and put the milk crate on the line, and somebody else packs the order. It is the most grueling, labor intensive job I've ever done, but it's actually quite rewarding. I actually enjoy doing my job. There are parts of my job I like, such as doing returns, which is where I toss the inventory back on the shelf to be reused because we do get a lot of returns. And it's rewarding and it pays good. And I actually, there's even some health benefits to it. I am about 20 pounds lighter than I was when I started the job a year ago. And I've held down this job for a year and 2 months. I've made this job work and they are very grateful to have me. And my volunteer job, I still do that because I still have the time to with my current job. They love me. They love how dedicated they am. My volunteer job, I can be a little bit more open about. With that job, I play with dogs. I socialize them. I get them ready for their families. I give them treats. I love on them. Um, and sometimes I do events for these people. One of the biggest challenges I had with finding employment was, well, first off, I got a generic degree. I got studio art, which doesn't get you anywhere. So one of the biggest challenges I was having was this job needs to be within town because I don't drive. I chose not to. So wherever I go for employment needs to be on a bus route. And that also impacts my schedule at my current job. So I'm on a fixed schedule on the days I do work. And so that was a big challenge. That was one reason why I was having so much trouble, was because I couldn't find a job that I could get to, and I was also failing in interviews. If it weren't for asking the state to intervene and help me find a job, I probably would still be employed to this day.
Well, that's a really powerful story, Kelsey. So I would hope that listeners would hear from your story again about perseverance, determination, but also, Kelsey, that you reached out for help, because I think there are a lot of people who won't do that for some reason.
Yes, I actually know somebody who has also struggled with employment day after day. And I said, you ought to look into this office, and so that they can place you with a job placement agency. They're like, well, right now I'm on a wait list for those people. I'm like, well, that's at least a good first step. Um, that's the thing. A lot of people who are adults with disabilities don't realize, and this is not just Kentucky, don't realize that there are resources that can and will help you find a job. You just have to know, you just need to know where to look, because I was doing it on my own. The first couple times I was employed, I was going on Indeed and all the other job listing sites day after day, and I was putting in application after application, resume after resume. But at the end, and I was even going to interviews, but at the end of the day, the lack of experience from where I just didn't have any good luck got in my way. And so going somewhere where the job agency knew these people front and back and was able to recommend me so highly was great. And not only that, my job is good about accommodations. They were able to give me a fixed schedule, work around my transportation issues, let me use my earbuds in the warehouse, like not just one, both, because it is a very noisy warehouse and some of the things in there are just deafening. um just completely willing to bend over backwards for me, because I'm willing to put in the work, I'm willing to show up, and I'm willing to give it all to the job within reason.
Well, obviously, both of you have strong work ethics, so it's finding the right fit. For it's isn't it? It's finding the right fit.
It is,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when you're like me and autistic. Unfortunately, autistic people have a harder time finding employment than a lot of disabled populations. And so I feel like if an autistic person is just willing to reach out and ask for help, they will come a long way.
Well, are you? I'm assuming, Kelsey, you're here in Kentucky. Am I correct?
Yes, blind.
Okay.
Tim and I are actually in the same town. We actually live a couple neighborhoods apart from each other.
Oh my gosh. Well, how about that? That's a small
we
world.
go we go to the same church. He told me we have a disability friendly church, and he got me going to it.
Well, that's awesome. That's great. That's wonderful. Well, because there is a project at the Human Development Institute called Innovative Supports for Autistic Workers. So that would be, it's a resource really for employers about the employment of autistic people, but there
Yeah.
also are resources possibly there for people themselves to explore.
You should
Do you
probably
know?
email that to me. I actually know
Sure.
some of the people at Human Development Institute.
Well, you may know Bev Hart. So Bev
Bev
oversees. Bev.
Bev and I go way back. Bev
Okay.
used to lead an autistic support group in my area, and so we kind of just reconnected a few years ago. I know Bev very well. I have met squawkers a few times.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome, Kelsey. So innovative supports for autistic workers, but you mentioned the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. So
Yes,
yes, and right now,
highly
I'm sorry, go ahead.
recommend OVR.
And right now they are under what's called an order of selection. So they're not accepting new clients, but they are, as your friend has learned, you need to go ahead and apply and get on a waiting list because at some point that's gonna reopen.
Yeah,
And
that
so,
was the big that was the big thing with me and being placed with OWL was I needed to be on a wait list, and thankfully that what was supposed to be a 6 month wait turned into, I believe, a 3 month wait.
well, that's
And
nice.
even though I'm a success story with the job coach, I'm still roped into giving updates to her whenever she comes by work and visits. I'm like, I'm one of your success stories. I'm not your client anymore, but my boss is still letting me take time out of my day to talk to you.
Well, that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, let's talk about a few more resources that could be helpful to listeners. So, both of you are stable ambassadors. So, Tim, would you like to talk about what stable is and how that can be helpful to people, whether they work or not?
Sure. Okay. So, STABLE is Kentucky's ABLE program. ABLE is the acronym for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And what these ABLE accounts allow users to do is you can save up to $100,000 with a $20,000 annual contribution limit for 2026. And the one thing is you have to have your disability diagnosis before the age of 46. Previously, it was before the age of 26. However, as of January 1st, 2026, they raised the age limit at the federal level. So as long as you've had your disability diagnosis before the age of 46, you can open a stable account. And what these accounts allow you to do is you can save for qualified disability expenses or QDEs. I'm going to give you some examples. Rent, food, employment, education, transportation, assistive technology, supports and services. Um, so the technology for my story that Carolyn mentioned, I bought using my stable account. And, um, they're very, very good in that regard, but it's very, very helpful to keep receipts just in case, you do get audited and are asked, hey, prove that whatever you bought is qualified, is a qualified disability expense. So that would be my advice. But yeah, the Stable Kentucky, the A1 National Resource Center website will be in the description, as well as some other great resources. And Carolyn, I'll give the floor back to you.
Okay. Well, and Kelsey, I think you also have a stable account, if I'm not mistaken.
I do. It was set up for me when I was a child. Right now, we're focusing on letting it grow for when my mother is no longer around. Something that Tim mentioned that it's not quite related to stable that I would like to mention is if you are an OVR client, they can help you with transportation costs. Like for me, I have to purchase a city bus pass every month, and they were assisting with that when I was an active case with them.
Okay, that's
But
true.
yes,
Hmm.
but yes, I do have a stable account. We act when For example, when I had a relative die who left me a large inheritance, we slowly dispersed the IRA into the stable account so that it wouldn't hold me back in the future.
That's awesome, Kelsey. That's great. It's a wonderful vehicle for sure. And
Yeah.
also, we're going to talk. Some people are often concerned about what would happen to their Social Security disability benefits when they go to work. So, one of the resources for that are the Work Incentives Planning and Assistance Services we have here in Kentucky, which includes the Center for Accessible Living in Louisville that serves
Mm.
Western Kentucky. Goodwill here in Lexington has the contract with Social Security to serve Fayette County and South and also East. So, we're going to include that information as well. But those of you who are listening from outside of Kentucky, you would have ABLE accounts where you live. You would also have Work Incentives Planning and Assistance Services where you live. And so Tim's going to provide you with some resources around both of those because
Yes.
being concerned about losing your quote check really is one of the biggest reasons why people don't go to work. And we want to help people overcome the myths and also to get the facts to make wise and good decisions about work.
Yes, and I will say one of the big things I have been struggling with is trying to get on Social Security, not Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, which is SSI, be um, because of my chaotic job history. It's an uphill battle. We are still fighting it to this day, but that is definitely a challenge I've been facing over the past, oh gosh dang it, 2 years, I believe.
Well, they do have a complicated application process, that's for sure, Kelsey.
Oh God, it's gonna get to the point where we're gonna have to start over because it's been one hurdle after another. It's horrible.
Well, Tim, we've been talking for about a half an hour. I'm not sure how long these go, but I'm thinking maybe it's a wrap.
We
Yeah.
usually talk about half an hour on average.
Usually. All right. So, real quick before we go, I want to thank Carolyn for joining Kyra and I in the studio today for this very special episode of the Blindside Podcast. And all links that Carolyn mentioned will be in the description of this podcast on YouTube and Spotify or wherever you get your fix of this podcast. So, Carolyn, would you like to say anything before we wrap up?
I hope that everyone is encouraged today that if you're thinking about that you'll take some action steps toward pursuing employment, because as Kelsey and Tim have both pointed out, it's not just about the money, it's also about the purpose, the people, and the possibilities that work present. So
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. So with that being said, again, thank you to Carolyn for joining us today. For Kyra Super saying, I've been Blind Metal Gamer saying, until next time, so long, take care, stay safe, and I will see you guys later. So long for now.
This has been Kyra Super Saiyan. Just remember, you have resources. Do not be afraid to use them. And we will see you all in another episode.
Yes. This is Blind Metal Gamer along with Kyra Super Saiyan, and we would like to thank you for listening to another episode of the Blindside Podcast. You can find the Blindside Podcast on all popular podcasting platforms, including Spotify and YouTube. So be sure to comment, like, follow, and subscribe so you will not miss a single episode. Until next time, so long, stay safe, take care, and peace out.